From the European Parliament in Brussels, this is Raw Politics. Thank you for joining us tonight, and this is what we have for you in the programme. Decision Day. British MPs tried to break the Brexit deadlock by voting on their own amendments to Theresa May's deal. No negotiation, a chilly reception from the EU to the idea of any changes even before the voting begins. A losing battle, Facebook and the European Commission step up their fight against fake news. Going green, why the EU's far-left party is looking to a new youth climate movement ahead of elections. And Britain come back. Meet Reunion, the Dutch boy band trying to stop Brexit through music. All right, it is time to meet our panelists this evening. We have joining us tonight Andrew Byrne. He is the EU correspondent with the Sunday Times. Andrew, which of these stories are you watching closely?
Well, story might be a strong word, but the Dutch boy band attempt to reverse Brexit. I mean, we've tried everything else to fix this mess. Why not
I
try
know,
this?
why not this? Have you seen the video?
I have. It's pretty brutal, to be honest.
We're going to have a look at it tonight. All right, joining us tonight as well is Marietje Schaake. She's a Dutch MEP who sits with the ALDE group. What about you, Marietje?
Well, I think the whole question of tech platforms and disinformation is a very urgent one, so that really stood out for me.
I think there is a bit of movement on that front as well tonight.
Oh, let's see.
Okay, let's see. All right, also joining us is Hans-Olaf Henkel. He's a German MEP who sits with the ECR group. Now, which of these stories are you watching?
Well, I am intrigued by this Dutch band. I think they are right. I think it is time that the EU makes a move and tries to talk Britain out of leaving.
So this Dutch band is really getting quite a lot of attention here. Where we're starting in tonight is, related to this Dutch band, is Brexit. Now, a message from the UK Prime Minister tonight, because Theresa May, she is trying to get her British MPs to agree to her deal, to vote on those amendments. She will try to reopen the negotiation, she said, with the EU over the Northern Ireland backstop. Now, this has been such a sticking point. What a pivotal day it has been in Westminster tonight. And Parliament will vote on several key amendments to May's failed Brexit deal. All right, let us cross live to our political editor, Darren McCaffrey, who is in Westminster for us. Darren, what did Theresa May say today?
Here we are yet again, Tessa, with another set of crunch votes in the UK Parliament on Brexit. What did Theresa May today say? She said that she hopes that the UK Parliament will finally be able to agree upon what it wants from these Brexit negotiations on a deal that may well get through this Parliament, so that she can go back to Brussels and potentially start to renegotiate. It is, in some ways, quite extraordinary politics. This is Theresa May, a woman who stood up just a couple of weeks ago, even within the last few days, and said that this was her deal, the only deal, that it was a good deal, a deal that contained the backstop that she now wants to change. But she argued time and time again the European Union didn't want to change. But of course we are in extraordinary times in British politics. She also did say that she wants to ask the UK for significantly and legally binding changes to that withdrawal agreement, while at the same time accepting that if there is no deal by February 14th, so essentially in 2 weeks' time, Valentine's Day, that there would be a vote in Parliament to rule out no deal. But my word, Tessa, has she set herself a challenge? What, in the space of 2 weeks, after 2.5 years of negotiation to get the deal that she said she wanted, she's now going to go back to Brussels and try and get an even better deal in that space of time. It's going to be pretty tough.
Oh, it is. It is interesting to see what kind of reaction she will get here. All right, but Darren, we also know that, as I was saying earlier, that MPs will be voting on a couple of key amendments today. These are important ones. And one of them was introduced by Conservative MP Graham Brady. Now, if approved, it would replace the Northern Ireland backstop with the so-called alternative arrangements to a hard border. It also supports leaving the EU with a deal and would be extremely helpful for the Prime Minister. All right, Darren, do we have any reaction to this?
I think many MPs are quite surprised that they're having to come up with these solutions, not the Prime Minister, who is in number 10 and apparently in charge of the government and the country. But it must be said that it does look like the Brady Amendment may well go through tonight. It's going to be close. The numbers are tricky, but it does seem to have the backing of most Brexiteers and notably the Democratic Unionist Party. But let's get the view of two people very much involved in this debate. We've got Nigel Evans, he's a Conservative MP, and fair to say a Brexiteer, and Gina Miller, who is very much part of a campaign to lead, not leave. I think someone who's not terribly fond of Brexit. Nigel, let's start with what I said tonight, which is, what is Theresa May doing? She said only a couple of days ago that this was the best deal, her deal, the only deal, and now apparently it isn't.
Well, quite a few things have changed since then. We had that historic vote several days ago when Theresa lost by, I think it was the largest margin in modern history. And so since that time, she's had a lot of people through the door at number 10. I went with some of the officers of the 1922 committee with Graham Brady, and we talked to her about the problem of the backstop. She's had some Labour MPs in. One person she hasn't had in, of course, is Jeremy Corbyn, but never mind. He's far too busy talking to other groups of people who are rather more interesting, perhaps, than the British Prime Minister. I actually think he's made a big error, by the way. Now then, are we going to make any progress tonight? And that's going to be the big question. The Graham Brady motion, which I have put my name to as well, gives the Prime Minister the opportunity, as she's made quite clear today, to go back to Brussels, reopen the withdrawal agreement. I know they don't want to.
Which the EU have repeatedly said they won't.
Yeah, I know, and you've just quoted the Prime Minister as saying a few things, that she's seen the reality and had to change her way. And the European Union, we've had Michel Barnier change his mind a bit on the Northern Irish border by saying, well, maybe there are things that we could do to facilitate goods going back and forth without a hard border. So there's been a bit of give on both sides. A few more compromises, and as you know, one thing that emerged overnight was that Nicky Morgan, who has been somebody who's been very difficult on this Brexit matter, and Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is the chairman of the European Research Group, have come together on a solution, maybe.
Gina Miller, Nigel makes a sensible point, is if we can get Parliament to vote on a deal, surely that's a good thing, because it avoids a no-deal Brexit and ultimately fulfills what the public voted for.
I absolutely 100% in agreement, because, you know, I actually fought to make sure the Parliament were exactly where they are now, doing what they're doing, which is scrutinising and deciding what the steps are as we go forward. And I do think it's a time for compromise, because the reality is, if nothing is agreed, then no deal is the legal default. And in everyone's view, I think the majority of people agree, wherever you are, that that is not a good place for the UK to be.
So are you now arguing that Europe should move? Europe should listen to Parliament, and essentially it should give ground on changing the backstop?
No, I didn't say that. What I said is that Parliament should actually be doing what it's doing. And I think tonight these amendments, I view them more as indicative votes, actually, to say what will go through in the future and what wouldn't. Then the Prime Minister has to go back and prise open this agreement, which previously the EU said they wouldn't and she said they wouldn't. But my argument is slightly different, is saying after 2.5 years of this total chaos, if she's going to go back and reopen that withdrawal agreement, prise that open, why not prise open the deal we already have? You know, why not go back and say, actually, if you want us to stay, if you really, really will suffer from us, why don't we see what we can get out of this? Leverage the leave vote. I mean, surely that, to me, is the most sensible thing after 2.5 years of chaos.
Good stuff. Well, there's the view of two people here in London. It is a very difficult task for the Prime Minister. Of course, the big response now is, if this amendment does pass tonight, what will Europe do next?
Exactly, and let's put that question, okay, to you, Marietje. Do you think that there has actually been movement, that the EU is going to budge a little bit on this front?
Well, look, I think it's been very painful to watch London. And when we talk about the amendment going through, it's not the only amendment that's going to be voted.
Sure.
So it's still entirely unclear where a parliamentary majority would end up tonight. And, you know, that's what we have to see.
But when it comes to the
first.
Irish backstop, do you think there is movement there?
There's been articulation that clarifications can be given, but there's no gambling with peace. And I think that is very, very important. When I look at the whole British political debate over the past couple of weeks especially, it seems like people forget that there's a wider world out there, that if they have white smoke tonight, that doesn't solve anything vis-a-vis the EU 27. I mean, we've always said, I mean, I prefer that Brexit would never happen. Look at the mess, look at the most unfortunate timing. In a world that changes so fast, we should really stand together rather than have these messy fights. But short of no Brexit, I think the deal on the table is a good deal. And there cannot be that much room to change it. The negotiators have said we're not going to reopen the withdrawal agreement negotiations. Maybe a political declaration can be clarified with sort of a point on the horizon. But whether that's enough for the whole bunch of parliamentarians that know what they don't want but don't know what they want, I can't predict.
I mean, when you say clarifications, I don't think it sounds very cosmetic. I mean, I don't think there's any substantial change that could actually be done there when you say clarification. So what do you think? Is this just a matter of coming back here and then repeating and repeating and repeating the same thing, hopefully, with fingers crossed, something changes? Is that what's happening here?
Well, it's puzzling. I mean, to say the European response to this would be as chilly as an understatement. I mean, one official said to me he thought that the UK was lost in a parallel universe in this discussion, and that they have many officials, I think, have the impression that MPs now are step by step coming up with new ideas, new solutions, new ways out that have already been thrashed out in the talks between negotiators and found unsatisfactory. So I think it'll be a very quick and sharp rejection of the kind of magical thinking that officials think is embedded in this alternative arrangements amendment. I mean, just to specifically focus on that Brady amendment, what it says is to avoid a hard border, we'll come up with something else. Alternative arrangements is something else to be determined, to be developed. For officials here and for European diplomats, they think that's magical thinking. They said if you actually have an alternative to the backstop, let's hear it.
Yes.
And the amendment leaves it completely unspecified what these arrangements are.
Is there an alternative, do you think, that can be palatable to the Irish?
Well, I think it is time to think of an alternative which is palatable to the Irish, to the Scottish, to the English, and to the European Union.
What
I
is
think
it?
I think we have now understood that Brexit is economically wrong, it is politically wrong, and it is morally wrong. Economically, because both Britain and the European Union will suffer heavily. Politically, because Europe needs the pragmatic voice of Britain in the European Union also in the future. And morally, because both British and the European Union people will be poorer. So this is like two trains running on the same track against each other, and I think it is now time for responsible politicians to change the strategy completely. And I think what should be done now by Europe, by the EU, and I mean Brussels, they should signal to Britain that if they decide to stay in the European Union, they would be willing to give them some more autonomy over the freedom of movement. And I think that is not only required, it is now necessary to avoid this big historical disaster.
All right, that's okay. We'll leave it at that for now because this discussion will definitely continue. But let's go back to Darren first, because there is another amendment that is getting a lot of attention among all the others. It is the so-called No Deal Amendment. Now, it was introduced by the Labour MP Yvette Cooper and is designed to stop the UK from crashing out of the EU. Now, if no deal is approved by Parliament by February 26th, it would require Theresa May to try to extend Article 50. Now, the new deadline would be the 31st of December. All right, Darren, we'll look at Yvette Cooper's amendment. This does represent this thinking that there's a growing fear inside Parliament of a no-deal Brexit. Is that what this is?
Yeah, I think there has been fear for quite a few months about a no-deal Brexit. MPs have essentially expressed that they're not terribly in favour of that, but the legal position of the UK is currently, unless some other deal is formulated, that Britain will leave the EU on the 29th of March. Legislation essentially needs to be changed, and that is part of Yvette Cooper's amendments, which seems like it's going to be supported by the Labour opposition. Again, the numbers will be tight. We don't know whether it will pass or not, but certainly it would give control essentially to Parliament to delay Brexit. Let's bring back in our guests again, Gina Miller and Nigel Evans. Gina, let's first of all start with you. This idea of delaying Brexit, ultimately, there's no sign that even if you delayed it, you get a better deal. The EU repeatedly say this is the only deal on the table, and all it will do is frustrate the will of the people who want to leave. We know, listen to them here, who want to leave as soon as possible.
Well, I think I don't think the will of the people phrase is particularly helpful, but I think the most important thing is where we are at the moment, which is no option seems to be capable of being agreed if you look at the legislative timetable in the time we have left for Parliament to sit. So in that case, is it the only option left? And I do worry, actually, because the EU would have to agree to an extension. And if that extension is only up until the May elections, does that really give us time to achieve anything meaningful? So I do worry. I think, for my mind, it would be much better if we could reach a resolution that actually kept it in Parliament's remit to resolve this than looking to an extension. And if it is that the case that that's impossible, then I think the EU has every right probably to turn around and say, well, look at the case that passed in December in the ECJ, which says that, why not revoke? I mean, extension to me doesn't make sense.
Revoke Article 50, but we're almost at the point though.
Don't.
We're almost at the point though where Article 50 is inevitably going to have to be extended because there is no way that the legislation can get through this Parliament or indeed the European Parliament in time.
We can sit weekends. We can sit later. Darren, there has to be political will. And I agree with Gina, really. Extending Article 50 for what purpose? And when we spoke to the Prime Minister last week at Number 10, she herself said, unless there was a deal that's actually been decided by Parliament, so we know where we're going, why would the European Union ever agree to an extension? Or...
Yeah, but surely you don't agree with revoking Article 50.
Oh, certainly not.
But so the alternative is no deal, which the UK government, which economists, with Sainsbury's and McDonald's and everyone's suggesting would be devastating for the UK economy.
Yeah, do you know, Project Fear 2 is going incredibly well. I represent a constituency in the Ribble Valley, surrounded by farms, growing food. Do you not think that the Spanish want to sell us their tomatoes, etc., etc.? And that's the big thing, you know. We've got a £95 billion deficit with the European Union. I think that they'll want to do a deal with us. So I actually think a deal is eminently doable.
Just very, very quickly, Gina. Project Fear, to be fair, it does seem to resonate with people here. They just don't believe all these warnings that no deal would be bad for Britain.
I think there's a huge misunderstanding about what no deal means, because actually the trade is the least of our worries, I think, with no deal. It's the fact that no deal would mean leaving not just the EU with no arrangements, it would mean leaving all the EU agencies without any agreements. And we don't have any of those replicated agencies, be it in medicines, in chemicals, in banking, in aviation. We are just simply not ready for no deal on the 29th of March. So it's really not about the trade question.
Gina Miller, Nigel Evans, as always, thank you very much indeed for joining us. For my part, I have to say, Tessa, I think given how difficult things are, given the fact the Prime Minister is going to go back to Brussels and try and get a new deal, I think at the moment it's looking, whatever happens, increasingly likely that Brexit will have to be delayed, even if it is, as the Leader of the House of Commons suggested only a few days ago, by a matter of weeks.
All right, thank you for that, Darren McCaffrey, our political editor, and his guests. All right, Maritia, same question. What is the appetite for the EU to extend Article 50, especially in the year of the European elections? What happens then?
Well, the big question is extending for what? For more of the same? Not at all. I mean, look at what an absolute mess has been emerged when the serious discussions came about what Brexit would mean. When you look at all this, you know, allegations of tomatoes will be sold to us anyway or whatever, why wasn't this research done before people made sweeping statements that Brexit was going to be a walk in the park, it was going to be fantastic, easy? It is not easy. And I think that the people who have claimed that there is a democratic mandate coming from the referendum, the one-off vote that is now, you know, claimed to be the will of the people, why are they so afraid to put it back to the people again? You know, that's what I really wonder. So I think that extensions and accommodations, they have to be spelled out. And if it's for more of the same, sorry, it is an absolutely unfeasible proposal.
All right, Hans, what do you think about what Marietje is saying? Is it a no on the extension? And also, do you think that it's like throwing the ball back to the EU's court so that if there is a no deal or if there's a crash, well, it's actually the EU who didn't want it?
Well, first of all, as I said before, Brexit is terrible for both. And Article 50 extension is certainly extending the chances that Brexit will not happen. So that's why I'm personally in favor of extending it, number one. Number two, I think if British government wants to have it extended, I talked to Juncker about it, to Kurz, to the latest, to the Prime Minister of Romania, who is now the chairman, or president of the council, and so on. I think they would give it to them. And the purpose, and I agree with Mariette that there should be a purpose, the purpose then would be a vote. And let's face it, Britain has once voted to join the European Union. And then there was a second vote to leave it. So now they have all the facts on the table. Why should they not be asked the same question again? And let's not forget, the Danish had voted twice. The Irish had voted 3 times. The French had rejected the Lisbon Treaty in the first time. Then it was changed, and the French again voted, and they accepted it. So a democracy which ceases to change its mind is not anymore a democracy. So I think if the British people were given the choice, May's deal, a crash-out Brexit, or remain, then I think it would be a fair way for the British to decide.
To be given another chance. Okay, quick word from you, Andrew, on this.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the second referendum debate has sort of taken on a new pace in Brussels, while it's lost momentum, I think, in the UK. It seems like there's less momentum at the moment, although that could change. And I think that speaks to the fact that there are 2 completely separate debates happening here. It's a dialogue of the deaf between Brussels and London, which is quite worrying. On the extension, I think if they ask for a short technical extension for 2 months, up to 3 months before the new parliament
But not a
sits,
December 31st
for something short, then
Right.
they'll get it. But I don't think leaders are in any mood for this to continue any longer than it has to.
But you have to ask the question. Let's assume they extend it to December 31st this year. What happens to the British 73
Exactly, after the European
members?
election
Will they
debate.
be elected?
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be a very interesting debate.
Yeah,
Okay.
that Cooper amendment can indeed be amended this evening, funnily enough. So her amendment could be shortened to 3 months in the next few hours. So it's a live issue moving.
It is a live issue. We will be keeping a close eye on this. All right, let's change gears a little bit and let's turn to climate change, another big issue here, especially because it could provide a crucial factor in this year's European elections, which we have just been talking about. Let's take a look. With weekly protests in several European countries, climate change has been rising up the political agenda, with young people leading the way.
I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic.
Now it looks like Europe's political parties are responding. The Party of the European Left announced their lead candidates for the elections this weekend, and something from their press release caught our attention. Another important issue is environmental sustainability in social responsibility, especially the new youth movement against climate change. With European elections just months away, will environmentally conscious voters find themselves at the center of a political battle for their support? All right, we know migration is a massive issue for the European elections, but then climate change, do you think this is the new topic that groups will latch onto and try to maximize?
Well, it's one of the clear topics where you can see that one country alone can't solve it. And so it is really important that the EU shows leadership. It is also economically important because we can stimulate innovations and really get ahead of the curve and take our part of this global problem, because it doesn't even end at Europe's borders. So yeah, I think it's a logical topic to prioritize, and our voters think it is one of the key priorities.
All right, you were laughing, but very quickly because you don't have much time.
Well, I'm laughing for a very simple reason. So far, I have seen the Greens in this house and in my own country always moving to the left. And now suddenly the left moves towards the Greens. So I think
We're in the center. We're liberals and
the next
Greens,
step
so,
is
you know.
they should join together because there's hardly a difference.
All right. We have a lot more coming up on the program tonight. Now, from military deployment to death due to lack of fresh produce, the warnings about a no-deal Brexit that keep coming. Plus, the EU and Facebook crack down on fake news ahead of the European elections. But how do you fight something that's becoming too difficult to even define? Do stay with us. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, fake news on social media is an issue we've seen impact elections around the world. And now Facebook has unveiled its own plan to tackle it ahead of the European elections in May. But just how far do these measures go? Alex Morgan and our team in The Cube are looking into this. Alex?
Well, Tessa, imagine you might be at the centre of not one country's election, but say 27, or seeing how Brexit goes, 28, we'll see, countries' elections across a continent. Like it or not, Facebook does find itself in people's sights as the EU elections loom. So the new champion for Facebook came in the form of Mr. Nick Clegg, now the former Deputy Prime Minister, yesterday in Brussels, being the figurehead, if you like, of a new set of proposals from Facebook about protecting election integrity. Now, this is part of a global push by Facebook ahead of elections, not just in Europe, but in India and elsewhere, to restore its credibility and to be seen as a platform which takes fake news seriously. Let's just rattle through some of the changes. Well, when it comes to ads are really something that Facebook were keen to talk about. First of all, increased transparency. That is, people will now have to register if they want to run political adverts, meaning more identities will become available for users to find out effectively who is paying for the content they're seeing. Why does it matter? Well, it's part of Facebook's attempts, they say, to tackle shady entities, foreign entities or unknown entities, pumping content into discussions. Then it comes down to issue ads. This will extend not just to general candidate ads, but ads about particular issues just as well. Some other takeaways for me, they are going to demote, not remove, key here, demote content which fact checkers like us here in theCUBE have proven to be fake. They won't take it away, but they'll push it down the news feeds. We've been hearing a lot of these proposals before from Facebook, but this is a nice joined-up way of looking at it. Also opening 2 election centres, one of them in Dublin, to tackle fake news. But look, crucially in all this, I just want to point out something that Facebook's got all these changes coming up, but we in theCUBE in October debunked a video about Guy Verhofstadt. Now, if you type in Guy Verhofstadt on Facebook, it may not be in your news feed, but it is still the #1 video at the top. This video, we debunked it months ago. Guy Verhofstadt sent a letter to Mark Zuckerberg, and here, 9.2 million views. Facebook still has a problem with this kind of content on that platform. Even if it's not in your news feed, it's high up. Now, I spoke earlier to Matt Navarra. He's a social media consultant. He had a take on how significant Europe is for Facebook. This was what he had to say.
So I think it recognises that it can't just ignore the requests or demands of Europe as a trading area, as a user base. I think they're probably more conscious of the fact now with GDPR that as a set of countries, we're not going to sit here and accept things as they are, and that we do need to change the way that we work with tech companies. And I think that the implementation of GDPR gave them that strong signal that there are a block of countries that won't sort of sit around and do nothing.
So Facebook, aware that Europe's not going to sit around and do nothing. But as I pointed out there, yes, these commitments ahead of those elections in May, Tessa, but just pointing out from that Guy Verhofstadt video, we debunked it months ago. Facebook have been made aware, and yet that kind of content is still #1 when you search for Guy Verhofstadt. So that's just one example of the kind of scale of the problem Facebook have when it comes to politically motivated misinformation on their platform.
All right, thank you for that, Alex and our team in theCUBE. Well, today the EU warned tech giants to do more in the fight against fake news or else face regulation. EU commissioners were unveiling their first progress report on how well Google, Facebook, Twitter and Mozilla comply with a code of practice on disinformation. Now, the Commissioner for Security of the Union, Julian King, had this to say about Facebook's newly revealed plan to tackle fake news.
So while we recognise and welcome the progress that's being made, reporting, which is what we're here to talk about, is still a bit patchy, opaque and self-selecting. And that's what we need to improve. We remain concerned at the pace of progress. The pace of progress on these issues needs to be faster. We can't afford to wake up the day after the elections and find that we could and should have done more. We need to take this action now.
And with me to explore fake news and disinformation is Nathalie van der Stadt. She is the digital spokesperson for the European Commission. We also have still with us Dutch MEP Marietje Schaake with the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats and digital affairs editor at Euractiv, Sam Stolten. All right, thank you everyone for joining us. I'll start with you, Nathalie. We just heard from the Commissioner there. So is the EU in a position to actually fight fake news? Is it well positioned to do so?
I think what we have to recall is that the EU is acting against fake news or disinformation since already 2 years. So we have been very active, first in consulting everyone who could have a role in these actions. So basically the academics, the journalists, the fact checkers, the online platforms, the advertiser companies, and we have put them together and we have produced an expertise. Then we came with a plan. First we came with a common plan, and yes, member states have
But
asked
do you
us
feel-
to be more active,
Yeah.
also in two ways. First, I mean, at EU level, we have already this Stratcom, so these experts working against Russian propaganda. That's one thing.
Okay.
And the other
And the
thing
other-
is asking the online platforms and the advertising companies to do more, to
Okay.
be more responsible.
Okay, but so you're saying the efforts of the EU, but it does feel like the EU is always a step behind the problem. What do you
Definitely. I mean, there's three things that I think are very, very problematic. One is that it's really too little, too late. Two is that it's putting the responsibility with the companies that are the problem. So it allows them to propose all kinds of
So
things.
it should be the Commission.
It should be the law,
okay.
that dictates, but also the business models of these platforms have not been assessed. And why have they not been assessed? Because the vital information for researchers, academics, NGOs and experts to look at is being withheld. So even as now Facebook and Google are reporting on what measures they have taken, they've also taken the measure that makes it harder for researchers to assess what is going on. So I think that we have to be very, very clear here. The freedom of expression and democratic rights of Europeans need to be protected. But outsourcing this responsibility to the very platforms that are responsible for the problem, their profit models are jumping up to the ranks, conspiracy theories, misinformed, crazy allegations that are misinforming people and eroding trust in our liberal democracies. And on top of that, we need to be very clear about what the exact impact is.
Yeah.
And without proper research into the algorithms, into the business models, we can't do it.
Yeah, there's so many things coming together here. Sam, simple question: is this a battle that can be won? By the EU especially?
At the current levels, no. Because you look at what Russia is doing. They've got a budget of over 1.1 billion at the Internet Research Agency, which is a well-known troll factory, and they're churning out bots and fake news on a daily basis. And by the way, they're preparing very much so ahead of the European elections. And our budget is 5 million euros. And this is the budget for the Stratcom force that kind of tries to battle against this Russian propaganda machine. So no, we're not doing enough. The code of practice is, a political gesture from the European Commission that they're coming out and presenting to people ahead of the European elections to say, look, we are doing something, we recognise this is a problem, but it simply doesn't go far enough.
But if I can jump in here, because clearly we're not doing enough, but we gave a chance to the online platforms, the companies, and to do more. We have already said that if it's not satisfactory enough, we will do more, including regulation if it's needed. One thing which is very important is, yes, we have only 5 million for now for the Stratcom, but it's a double of the budget that we had last year. So we're going quite fast in acting as well. And we are recruiting also.
All right, but there's a question I'd like to put out there, because this is something Nick brought up also. He said there's a huge difference between taking down hate speech and taking down content of politicians you don't like. So to your point of freedom of speech, how do we know? Is it companies who's going to tell us what's fake news and what is an opinion that you don't like?
This is the really, really difficult question, because, of course, I've had conversations with Julian King and Mr. Ansip and the European Commission where they've said, we will consider regulation in the future. But, is that a legitimate statement? Would they really consider ever regulating against what is true and what is false? And by what parameters do they make those decisions? But I do think there is a problem with the platforms self-regulating themselves, because, of course, they're accountable to themselves, to no one else. So I think we need to find some sort of a balance here.
Regulation will probably come. All right, Marietta, I'll give you the last word.
Let us not talk about regulating speech, because that indeed, a minister of truth brings back all these terrible memories of the darkest days of Europe, Soviet-style surveillance of people. We don't want that. But we also don't want Mark Zuckerberg to be the minister of truth. And so what we need to do is to extend laws that exist in the offline world to the internet, transparency on campaign finance, but also non-discrimination. Can people be micro-targeted as on the basis of their gender or on the basis of their sexual orientation? That is not allowed in the offline world. Why would we leave it entirely up to the platforms to see how they're going to do that in the online world? So let us begin, not with new regulations, but with making sure that the principles we care for, democratic rights, non-discrimination, fair competition, freedom of expression, also apply online. And we need oversight of the algorithms that these companies use, and that is the start. Without that...
Is this a good start? Quick question, very quick.
Yeah, it's exactly
5
the
seconds.
message of Commissioner King. I mean, working more with the research community and the fact checkers. We want the platforms to work more with them and to be much more transparent.
But there is still a lot more to be. I think the point that we all agree on is that there's a lot more to be done, and it's a difficult battle to be won. All right, coming up on Raw Politics, we have a lot more. Can a Dutch boy band stop the UK from leaving the EU? Meet the Reunion Boys, a group of guys from the Netherlands trying to woo Britain back through song. Have they struck a chord? Well, that is next. Welcome back. Now, there are just 59 days to go until the UK falls off a theoretical cliff edge. At least that's what you might be inclined to think if you heed some of the no-deal warnings in the UK press this week. We've taken a look at a few of them in today's Brexit Brief. Fresh fruit and vegetables, a luxury which could be about to evade the Brits unless those in here can find a solution avoiding a no-deal Brexit. That's according to British retail bosses who warn that soaring prices and supply chaos will leave shelves empty. The price of bananas alone could go up by 17%. With the majority of produce imported from abroad, they say an EU crash-out could be crippling. And that's not all. With more difficulty getting their 5 a day, no deal could also mean a spike in strokes and heart-related deaths. 12,000 extra deaths are estimated between 2021 and 2030, as intake of fruit and vegetables risks falling by 11%. That warning from researchers at Imperial College London. And finally, the Ministry of Defence is under fire after a leaked memo hinted at redeploying up to 1,000 of its workers. Many of those supporting the British Armed Forces would be moved to help in other sectors instead. But critics say it's all Project Fear. And joining me to discuss this is Nathan Gill, a British MEP who sits with the EFDD group. We also have Alan Smith, a Scottish MEP who sits with the Greens EFA group. And back with us, Andrew Byrne, EU correspondent with the Sunday Times. All right, we saw that. Troops on the street, running out of fruits and vegetables, people stocking up. Is this fear-mongering or is there genuine fear?
Well, there is genuine fear and there is fear-mongering. There are people who are actually trying to whip this up successfully, that people are getting really anxious about what the consequences of no deal would be. But it's hypothetical, and the reason why it's hypothetical is because we've had 2 years of a deeply intellectually dishonest debate where there's lots of ways in which we could interact with the EU. The Scottish Government's put forward various ways in which we could leave the EU but remain within the single market. That would be a less damaging Brexit than the one we're looking at. But because Mrs May has not reached out in any meaningful sense to other parties, Scotland, Ireland, other places, we've not been able to have that debate. So now she's trying to posit that it's my deal or chaos, both of which are unconscionable.
Nathan, chaos on the cards? What do you think?
Well, it's ridiculous to say that we're somehow going to suddenly become Venezuela and we're going to have empty shelves and... honestly, I've not encountered anybody at all who's believing any of this. And I'm sure, Alan, you're probably discovering the same. When you go and speak to people on the streets, yes, there are people who...
We're hoarding,
No, nobody's hoarding anything. There are people who are absolute Brexiteers and people who are absolute Remainers, but none of them believe any of this nonsense. I don't know why they keep on peddling it out, because, quite frankly, it is just a case of the boy who cried wolf, and they did it last time. It didn't work last time.
Sure.
What makes them think it's going to work this time?
Maybe an exaggeration. Maybe if you say it's an exaggeration, but is there a genuine worry underneath it all that that people should be looking out for?
No, if anything, it's the opposite. People now are so fed up of just hearing Brexit, 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 that quite frankly, a lot of people are just saying, for heaven's sakes, just get on with it. Why don't we just leave already?
Andrew?
Yeah, I think some people are becoming immune to the warnings because some of them seem so hysterical. I mean, it seems kind of implausible to say that you'll have thousands of extra heart attacks and strokes. And frankly, I don't buy it as a piece of social science research.
What about running out of medical devices?
I mean, there will be problems for companies. Apparently, there was one important briefing of Michael Gove where he was told because of fresh ingredients that the UK could run out of Mars bars in a week in a no-deal scenario.
No Mars bars?
Yeah, the UK can survive without Mars bars, but people won't be pleased with it.
Sure.
And the difficulty, I think, for reasoned debate is how do you make people aware of the real risks without sounding hysterical?
Alan? Would you like to add to that? I mean,
Very much so.
hysterics-
The people are feeling very anxious about this, particularly EU nationals within the UK, British nationals elsewhere, because their rights are going to be changed. They are going to be taken away. This isn't Project Fear, and it shouldn't be airily dismissed.
Okay.
Because the Leave campaign made all promises to everybody. It was going to be everything you wanted. And 2 years later, what we've now got is a shabby deal which leaves us worse off, poorer, or chaos.
I think.
Deeply dishonest process.
Yeah, I think the rights are a genuine concern of people, and I think I also read that the Irish consulate, they're running out of forms for applications for passports. You know, so there is that genuine.
I wish I had an Irish granny, but sadly not.
All right. Okay, we'll stay with Brexit now, and we meet a Dutch boy band which has been formed with one mission: to convince the UK to stay in the EU. Let's take a look at that.
Britain come back, Britain come back, Britain come back to us. It's not too late to turn around. We're the Union Boys. Britain come back.
I'm Julia Veldonsee and I'm the creator of the Reunion Boys. So these boys are the materialization of my idea.
It hasn't been easy for us.
Well, we're in Brussels today because, of course, it's like the more or less the European capital, and there is a special event today where they invite us to come and perform. So it's our first gig outside in another country, so it's really exciting because we're from the Netherlands.
Britain come back, Britain come back, Britain come back to us. It's not too late to turn around.
I believe that our message is very sincere and very honest and very genuine to the people. Yeah, I think this might work.
Can we make you change your mind?
Okay, so well, the Reunion Boys, that's what they're called, are now back in the Netherlands, and I'm joined from Amsterdam by their founder, Julia Veldman, and two of the Reunion Boys, Gilles and Hejo. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us. It was nice to see that video. All right, what are you trying to achieve here?
Well, obviously we want the Brits to change their mind, but mostly we want to express how millions of Europeans feel about this whole situation. We are just very sad the UK is leaving.
Can we hear, what about Gilles and Hejo? Why are you doing this?
Well, clearly, for us, we couldn't just idly stand beside. You know, the Brexit's gonna have such an impact on the lives in the UK and in the rest of Europe. We just had to do something, so we bundled up our talents, and we think that music can reach those hearts.
I think one of the conversations we were reading up about you was there's a question of whether there is an element of satire in the work that you do. Is there?
Well, obviously it is a lot of fun, but that's also part of our plan. Because the fact that it is fun opens up the debate a lot. Everybody's very entrenched. And because we come with this surprising angle, we make room to rethink and to really talk to each other again.
Okay, why a boy band of all the things that you could think of to try and win the UK back? Why a boy band?
Well, the boy band is the best thing Britain ever gave to us, obviously. And most of the British boy bands, or a lot of them at least, come from the area that voted to leave. And that's why we decided to use this particular voice to try and reach those people again.
And Gilles and Hejo, do you now have people following you around in the street? Do you have fans?
Yeah, well, the response is overwhelming. The response is great. We actually now have an English fan club, which I really like. And we have there has been negative response by Brexiteers, obviously, but there has been a lot of positive response, and I really like it, and I really like people who say, I really like your message, I like the way how you're doing it. So that's really nice to hear from those people.
All right, thank you for joining us on Raw Politics. They're members of the Reunion Boys there. All right, coming up on Raw Politics, it looks like Theresa May could be headed back to Brussels to ask for changes to her Brexit deal. Should the EU budge? We want to hear from you. We want to know what you think. So stick around in the next hour for your chance to call in and tell us what's on your mind. Now, the contact information is on your screen. The phone number is at 00800 3333 7002. Email at rawpoll@euronews.com. And do join the debate on Twitter and Facebook. Use the hashtag #RawPolitics, and all our lines are open now. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Well, Euronews has special live coverage of that Brexit vote tonight, and that gets underway at 7 o'clock European Central Time, and we want you to participate. Your call will be taking your calls, we're waiting, and featuring your opinions in this special show. Now, here's how you can get in touch. Let's pull up the information there. 00800 3333 7002. That's our phone number, so do call in. Email us at rawpoll@euronews.com. And you can also go on social media. Use the hashtag #RawPolitics on Twitter and Facebook, and you can search for us on Skype. Type in Raw Politics there. All right, joining me now to discuss this is Shona Murray, our Europe correspondent, and still with us is British MEP Nathan Gill and EU correspondent with the Sunday Times, Andrew Byrne. All right, so we are talking about three things tonight on your call. Here are the questions that we want you to call in and get in touch with us and try to answer or ask about. Should the EU budge on Brexit? This is such a big question. Second, has Brexit changed your opinion of politicians? And third, are you afraid of Brexit, or is this fear-mongering? Now, I'll start with the first question. Should the EU budge on Brexit? Now, we see all the action going on in London with the British in the House of Commons and the UK Parliament. Theresa May is going to come back to Brussels and try to budge on the withdrawal agreement, the backstop, and also to extend Article 50. What do you think? Should the EU budge and give in to what the UK is asking for? And Shona, what else are we talking about?
What else? Has Brexit changed your opinion of politicians? Maybe you had a very high opinion of politicians, and then you're so sorely disappointed that they haven't been able to come to a conclusion. And maybe you are concerned that before you went to the ballot box, what you were told didn't materialise. So has Brexit changed your opinion of politicians?
Such an interesting. We have a politician with us, and what else, Andrew, we're talking about?
Yeah, I think an interesting question is: Are people afraid of Brexit? Are you afraid of it, or is this no-deal Brexit warnings? Is it fear-mongering, doom warnings? I mean, maybe we could get by without the Mars bars fine anyway. Maybe it's not such a big
As
problem.
we were talking about earlier, there are some that are legitimate, and others that really just sound incredibly ridiculous.
How terrible will it be, or is this just fear-mongering?
Right, Brexit. So which of these topics are you really looking forward to hearing? Maybe politicians?
No, I think definitely the fear-mongering, because I think that is one of the big issues which has been, we're just hearing again and again on British television, in the print media, and quite frankly, I think it's having the opposite effect on the populace, because we're not stupid, people are not thick, and so when they hear all of this, and then when they actually realise that the people who are giving these fearful messages have vested interests in the European project or are receiving money from the EU, it really then just proves...
Guarding democracy and guarding laws?
We're going to be having...
In what way?
We're going to be having this conversation later, because what we want to do is ask you to get in touch with us and let us know what you think, what Nathan had just said, and all of the other topics that we have. So our question is, should the EU budge on Brexit? Has Brexit changed your mind about politicians, and are you afraid of Brexit, or is this fear-mongering? Contact info are on your screen, 00800 3333 7002 for calling in, and rawpoll@euronews.com to email, and we're on social media. Just look for us there. All right, before we go, though, we do have time for tonight's Raw Moment. We just could not resist bringing this back. Now, take a look.
Britain, come back. Britain, come back. Britain, come back to us. It's not too late to turn around.
We'll always be connected. Our lives are intertwined. You can't change your course without remorse. Look at what you leave behind.
Britain, come back. Britain, come back. Promise we can change. Can we make you change your mind? Britain, you're great, but together we're greater.
So that was the Reunion Boys there. We had them earlier in the show. So what do you think? Music video of Britain Come Back,
Oh,
stay.
bless them. It's a nice sentiment, but as music genres go, maybe this was a pitch to Britain to stay in, Britain of the 1990s to stay in, rather than Britain of today.
It's kind of X Factor-esque, though, is it not?
Yes, but X Factor is no longer as popular on British TV
Oh,
as it
it's
used to
not?
be, so that boat has sailed.
Yeah.
I think they should have just put E17, stay now, and repeated that.
Yeah, because
It
there
was a
are
better
very
message.
articulate young guys.
They
though.
are, genuinely. I mean, when we were speaking to them earlier, and they did say they did get negative reactions as well from people, from Brexiteers who, you know,
And look,
just
they've
didn't
gotten a
want...
lot of publicity, so give them
They
credit
did,
for that.
absolutely. Good effort there.
And no harm in a little bit of positive vibes to Britain. You know, everything's so
Sure.
confrontational at the moment.
And
I
something
think
like
it's
this is quite
welcoming,
nice.
yeah.
Well, yeah.
There's no harm in trying it,
All
let's
right.
face it.
Okay.
A for effort.
Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight, and do stay with us for that special Euronews coverage on the Brexit vote. And your call, of course, we want to know what you are thinking. Find us on social media. Use the hashtag #RawPolitics. See you then.